Welcome to Say Can You See? We are the bi-monthly, show of the Society for Economic Equality. For over 20 years, we've been bringing you our trenchant critique of the capitalist system and its endgame. Some of our first shows dealt with NAFTA. Well, today we're going to talk about the TPP. And if you like NAFTA, you're going to love the TPP. This is the trade agreement that Hillary Clinton called the gold standard of trade agreements. But even the Heritage Foundation says this isn't a free trade agreement at all. This is something different. The TPP is the most egregious assault on the sovereignty of nations I've ever seen in my life. Corporations are proposing that they be able to form their own arbitration tribunals to dispose of the laws of local economies, protecting local people, so as to ensure the profits of corporations. That's why we have this sign here tonight, if you'll show it. The TPP equals total power to profit. Let's begin with NAFTA. 20 years ago, one of our first shows was about what we could expect if NAFTA became law. With me tonight is a founding member of the Society for Economic Equality and our executive producer, Mark Zapotowski. Mark was with us on some of the earliest shows on NAFTA and on things like private prisons. It's in 95 that we did a show on Wackenhut and talked about what we could expect with the growth of the private prisons industry and mass incarceration. We have some bragging rights over the last 20 years if you go back and look at our shows. Our positions have been a lot like Bernie Sanders' positions all this time on most of these issues, and all this time we've called ourselves socialists. Society for Economic Equality has been our name to begin with. We were founded by Frank Girard, the man who was just a little bit too socialist for the socialists, and so he founded our group, the Society for Economic Equality. Now, Frank always said, don't vote, it just encourages the bums. It just encourages the gang who runs the show. If you watch some of our early shows, you'll see Frank going, the gang that runs the show, the bankers and things like that. Well, that's what we're here to talk about. Who does the TP benefit and whom was it written for? It's certainly not a good thing for the environment. It's not a good thing for workers. It's not a good thing for local law. Pablo, let's talk about NAFTA.
Yes, I would like to give you a little background about what is NAFTA, North American Free Trade
Agreement.
This NAFTA was approved in 1994 by President Clinton. The countries involved was United States, Mexico, and Canada. The Mexican president, Carlos Salinas de Gortari, was the president in 1994, and he promised to Mexicans that NAFTA was gonna be the passport to the first world, which is not true. It was a disaster for Mexicans. Maybe you can explain what happened in the United States, but I'm going to explain what happened in Mexico. When NAFTA passed, all the corporations from the United States entered to Mexico and start selling corn and other products. As you know, corn and other products here in the United States are subsidized by the federal government. So these producers, they receive millions of dollars to produce the corn and other products. And this they flood the Mexican market with corn and other products like.
And this drove out the small farmers, bankrupted them.
Yes, the small farmers, Mexico, most of the farmers are small, like a few acres here, a few hundred acres there. Depends how wealthy the small farmer was. And when NAFTA came, it just flooded the market and destroyed the economy of these small farmers. This is the reason why we have so many immigrant Mexicans here in the United States. When NAFTA was approved, they flooded the market with these products and they bankrupted these small farmers in Mexico.
And the small farm worker, too.
And the small farm worker, of course. And if you have an acre, 2 acres, 5 acres in Mexico, you are a small farmer who is growing corn in 1994, and you are selling your products, your corn or whatever you are growing in the markets of Mexico. This totally destroy your economy, Here you are competing with these huge corporations. They are selling the same product that you are selling, for example, corn, for 10 times cheaper the value that you can afford to sell your product.
So you end up moving to the United States to try and find a job.
Which ends up being working in a field.
You lose your land, you lose your house, you lose your animals. If you have like a few cows, a few, pigs, cows, whatever you have, you lose everything because you can compete with a corporation that's selling the same product that you are selling 10 times cheaper than you can afford it.
To come to America to work for substandard wages.
So
And
what do? You sell everything what is left and come to the United States to
work
find
for
a job.
substandard wages,
To
without
come-
protections, always under the threat of deportation.
Well, the thing that I found amazing was that all that happened after I went to see Clinton and Hillary speak in 1992 down on 28th Street at the Holiday Inn there, and they said that they were against NAFTA. They said
Yes.
that they were against globalization. And as soon as he got in, he said, "Oh, now I'm looking at NAFTA again." And then a month later, he was all in favor of it, and then he was all in favor of globalization. So
Now let's talk about NAFTA
So-
and the TPP and Hillary's support for
but
both.
let me
Okay.
Yes,
me explain
all right, Pablo.
from NAFTA. Like many people think, Mexicans are coming to the United States, right? But
Yeah.
there is a reason, There is an economic reason. NAFTA destroyed the economy of Mexico. All the products that came from Canada and United States flooded the Mexican market and ruined
Overwhelmed your small
thousands and thousands
businessmen and small
farmers
farmers.
and small
Yeah.
businesses. And what do? You need to feed your
It-
family, so you come
It
to
destroyed
United
communities, just as American policy in Guatemala and Nicaragua and El Salvador destroyed communities, causing a refugee crisis. And every time there's a refugee crisis, the Americans go, "Why should we let them in? These people are dangerous."
So it's not that Mexicans wants to come to Disneyland because we love Disneyland. No,
a lot of
it's
Mexicans
because
come work here, send their money home, and retire back home.
NAFTA destroy your economy, destroy
No,
your
not at all.
everything.
Bernie Sanders calls single mothers and undocumented workers the unsung heroes of the American economy. And it's so refreshing to hear someone say that when we've heard politicians say for decades, since we started this show over 20 years ago. When's the last time you heard a politician say anything nice about the poor, much less undocumented workers and single mothers?
Could I say something
Yes,
about
go ahead.
immigration from Mexico? Well, look at Europe. In Europe, they had Turks came into the European economy, to Germany or to Denmark or to Sweden, and they called them guest workers. But the same thing was happening in the United States. The border was lightly enforced so that the guest workers would come in. They didn't want to call them guest workers. They paid them substandard, I mean, they were allowed to pay them substandard wages by having them be unofficial, but clearly they were plugged into the employment system and they were part of a plan. Otherwise, the border would have been enforced. And now the Republicans are angry at these people and use them as as a way of scoring political points with their electorate, and it's entirely unfair. Because these people were allowed in essentially as guest workers, it's unfair to try to evict them in this way.
But let me tell you what happened with NAFTA, because we are giving the background of what happened with NAFTA, and then what are they trying to do with this Trans-Pacific Partnership? TPP?
Let us move on to the Trans-Pacific
But
Partnership.
let me tell you like very important details. Like so Mexicans believe the Mexico was gonna be the part of the first world. You know, one of the
NAFTA, the promise of NAFTA was that Mexico would join the first world and
Yeah.
America would enjoy unequaled prosperity, because if you let trade across the border, even if you don't let labor across the border, then you're going to make a lot of
But,
money somehow.
It's just
Someone's gonna make a lot
Supposedly
of
we
money.
were going to
It
export a
is-
lot of products.
it is
And
just
Wall Street made a lot of money.
Idiotic to think that Mexico is an equal partner with United States, and it's the same of these countries: United States, Australia, Chile, Malaysia, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore, and Vietnam. Like, let's compare. Like, do you think the Chile is the same economy than United States or Australia or Peru? Is there is no equal partnership there? So
Well, it'll be America and Japan running the whole show as usual.
so let me
That's
give-
all about isolating the Chinese to keep the American century going for another decade. It's a fool's errand, obviously. The TPP, like NAFTA, are designed to extract as much money out of any particular economy as
Perhaps-
they can, no matter what state they leave the infrastructure,
Perhaps you should
the
give us-
people, the government, and the environment.
So
That's
what
what
is-
the TPP, NAFTA, what NAFTA did to Mexico, the Trans-Pacific Partner is going to do on an even
Well,
larger scale,
The TP
with repercussions to the U.S. of the undermining of our labor and environmental laws and our courts and our political system itself, as we see.
the TPP is yet another international trade agreement, this one excluding China, but involving the nations of the Pacific, and it largely is yet another situation where the United States capital is free to flow into other investment markets and Japanese capital as well, other than China, in order now to isolate China, but it does not bring jobs to the United States. It's yet another opportunity for those jobs to continue to flow out of the United States. From the employment perspective, it's a loss. From the investment perspective, they're treating the Pacific Basin as an investment zone for investing in cheap manufacturing, cheap labor markets.
All of these trade agreements are designed to lower labor protections and environmental protections. They always say, oh, we're bringing the third world up to our codes. But really what we're doing is enforcing a draconian profit motive on economies. TPP allows a corporation to go into a municipality like Muskegon County, for instance, and say, your laws are in the way of our making profit by mining sand from your beaches for whatever we might want to mine it for, or your water. Your sand and your water, we've come for your sand and your water, and your local laws say we can't, so we're going to sue you to remove your laws and to make you pay damages for all the time we weren't allowed to mine your water and your sand. This is what TPP wants to do around the entire Pacific Rim. Also, that things can be shipped from place to place. For what purpose? Really?
Well,
let me.
for finding
As you
cheap
said early
labor.
on in this TV show, if an economy is not designed to make life good for people, then what's it for? Our economy seems to want to just move money to a elite that want to control our politics and the fate of our planet by extracting as much oil and money out of.
Let me go back to NAFTA, because this
All
is
right.
very interesting what you're saying. This is what happened in Mexico. Capital from United States and Canada came to Mexico. They start investing in Mexico in industries, technology, and whatever it was they were investing. But what happened is, like in 1994, the Zapatistas, a group of indigenous people in Mexico, rebelled, took arms, and took the several towns in Chiapas, Mexico, and the state. So, because NAFTA, under Carlos Salinas de Gortari, the Mexican president, was going to take their land. The Mexican Constitution was modified, so these corporations were going to be able to take their land to grow whatever they wanted, take their land. If there was mines there, they were going to take their mines. So they say no, and they took arms, they took several towns, and the investors that were in Mexico already investing got scared, and they took all the money that was in Mexico, and this caused like one of the worst economic crises in Mexico.
Well,
Are
a
you
lot of
saying
the-
when
all the is what you're saying. All this money comes, the investors got scared. They take the money
they went to China with
and
it.
they bankrupt the economy. Like
Originally, there
thousands
was
and thousands of people lost their houses, lost their businesses, lost everything.
after NAFTA.
And this is what is going to happen with TPP.
After NAFTA, there was a lot of investment flow in the cheaper labor market in the so-called maquiladora zones.
yeah.
But then after
Free
a few
trade
years,
zones,
after
yeah.
a few years, that giant sucking sound went to China. And at this point, China is now so developed that it's becoming a kind of geopolitical threat, and that investment is now beginning to freeze, and China is experiencing a kind of beginning to experience a kind of investment isolation, and that's what the TPP is.
Yes, to make their isolation worse.
But it does not end the outflow of investment into the cheap labor markets, and it doesn't end. TPP also
We have a goal.
but see,
Good.
if I could just say, TPP also, as you pointed out, also continues the process of wage price equalization, because not only do you have an outflow of capital to cheap labor, but once that's happening, these people who are making that investment can threaten workers here in the United States, that investing class, and say, you've got to take lower wages here in the United States, or we will move your jobs sooner to the trans-Pacific countries. And this is why there is such a falling middle class in the United States. This is why that middle class vanished, and we have this small class of very wealthy, as that Bernie Sanders points out, and this looming, ballooning class of the poor in the United States.
Yeah, and it's not getting any better with
No.
these trade agreements. Our number is 459-4881. This is Osei. Can you see the bi-monthly call-in show. It's November 18th, 2015. We're the Society for Economic Equality. The title of this show is TPP of the Iceberg. Now, I've been thinking that TPP is like the tip of an iceberg. This is connected to so many trends in our politics. The control of politics by Wall Street and big money, and the spread of trade agreements designed to squeeze as much money out of people and environments and countries as they could possibly squeeze.
Including the United States.
Yes,
I mean, including the average person in the United States, while the minority of the extremely, an ever-shrinking class of the extremely wealthy, I have to say. I mean, the people who benefit from this kind of situation become over time a smaller and smaller class. That's
Right.
why the Tea Party types really tend to be people from the medium to small business class, and
Sure.
they see themselves as losing out in this situation also. That's why there's such excitement over Trump, really, I think.
Donald Trump. Every time anyone mentions Donald Trump, we do something absurd, and that's why we're bringing on world traveler and renowned bones, what do they call those things?
The bones. They call them, it's an instrument called the bones. And you're
Yeah,
talking about the mysterious Mr. Blue, one of our members?
Yeah, man, can someone wake up Blue and send him out here? Yeah, talking of Trump, yeah, let's talk politics on the Republican side.
Let me,
and then we'll talk about Hillary's ties to TPP.
Let me give you an example of what is TPP. There is
mysterious Mr. Blue.
Well, hold on there, Pablo.
It's
Hey,
coming. Blue is coming.
this is our old friend Blue. He's traveled around the world a couple times, and he's been to many Bones conventions.
He's
And
been
he's
to
coming to one
the
pretty
Pacific
soon.
Rim countries.
And he's going to be our station break. So everybody relax and enjoy this tune. Let him have it, Blue.
Monday morning feels so bad. Everybody seems to follow me. Coming Tuesday, I feel better. Even my old man looks good. Wednesday goes too slow. Thursday just won't go. I got Friday on my mind. Something happened in the city. Da, 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 da. Be with my girl, she's so pretty. Da, 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 da. She looks fine tonight. She is out of sight to me. Tonight, I spend my breath tonight. I lose my head tonight. I've got to get tonight. Monday, I've got Friday on my mind.
Yeah! Woo-hoo! Yeah! All right. Thank you very much, Blue. Well, that should get you halfway around the world again. Anyway.
Gracias, Blue.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, you know, if you mention Trump, something absurd has got to happen. That's the only way to deal with it.
Well, there's a reason that Trump has emerged on
here
the
we go
Republican side.
Why?
Because Trump
There are a lot of
represents
haters.
anger at the Wall
Mexicans.
Street investment class.
But he's a millionaire.
He is one of them.
He's a billionaire. But he's one who says, get Wall Street off our backs. He's one
No way.
who says that we need a tariff wall again. I agree with the
He
tariff
says
wall.
that he
I
says the
agree
minimum
with-
wage is too
I
high.
agree with his anger at the investment class and at Wall Street. But I don't agree. I don't want to see Trump. I want to see Bernie Sanders get in
Everyone
there.
wants to see Bernie Sanders.
Oh, not everyone.
Well, let me give
But
you.
they should. If they're interested in what's good for the United States, they're going to vote for Bernie Sanders. If they want a real change, they're going to vote for Bernie Sanders. If they want someone who might end up being a fascist, I think they should
Should vote
bring
for
in
Trump. So this is, our
Bernie,
number is
Bernie.
459-4881. It's November 18th. We'd love to take your calls. You know, we used to get a lot of calls when we started this show. I think more people had cable TV in the 90s. We'd get people calling in saying,
Yeah,
It's
our
called,
area code
Trump
is
hate.
there, 616 and 459
Well,
4881?
well,
And we were on use-
let me give you an example from an article from the Atlantic. This is a magazine.
Yeah.
It says, let's take this. Supposed to be this is gonna happen. It's January 2017. The mayor of Grand Rapids signs a bill that will raise the minimum wage of all workers from $8 to $16. This is
Hypothetical.
hypothetical. Effective July 1st. His lawyers assure him that neither the federal or California Michigan minimum wage laws forbid that, and that is fine on the United States Constitution. Then a month later, a Vietnamese company, or maybe a German company here in Grand Rapids, they owns 15 bars in Grand Rapids, files a lawsuit saying that the pay increase violates the investor protection
Right.
provisions of the Trans-Pacific Partnership
Right.
TPP agreement recently approved by Congress.
Well, hypothetically, it hasn't been approved yet.
The lawsuit is not in a federal or state court, but instead will be heard by 3 private arbitrators. The United States government is the sole defendant, and the city can participate only if the United States allow it.
No kidding. That's what the Trans-Pacific Partnership says you get. That's all the.
This is
That's a violation of the Fifth Amendment, due process of law.
so this is
in a court of law.
going to violate local, state, and
Absolutely.
federal laws. This is very dangerous.
That's the Atlantic,
What do you
June
think,
22nd,
Yes.
2015.
Yes, and this is one of the scenarios that we can have. You know.
Well, I've been reading a lot about the Trans-Pacific Partnership from different points of view. Even the most Republican groups have their problems with it. For instance, this is from the Heritage Foundation, and even they say their specific areas of concern are that state-owned enterprises in places like
we have a phone
Vietnam. Oh, we have a phone call. That'd be nice. Martha, you're on the line. Question or
Hey.
comment, please?
Hi there, how are you?
Good. Just a
Well,
little
I
bit
got a
louder.
No, that's
I don't know if I can, I'm talking
good.
straight into my phone.
That's good.
All right.
Okay, my question is, if TPP is a repeat of NAFTA and
Or
other
worse.
disastrous trade agreements, why is this happening again? And why is Obama for it? Because that doesn't make any sense to me that he would do that. So,
All I can think is Obama's afraid to be against it. So the actual power of the oligarchy is so strong.
You know, Martha, as I said, Bill Clinton came in and while he was running for president, he said he wouldn't do this kind of thing.
Yes, but he's
Then,
not a
as soon
man
as
of
he got
principle. He
in,
thought
changed
Obama
his
was-
mind, and then
Exactly.
he totally globalized, totally globalized the U.S. economy, plugged it into China, which has been devastating. But the strange thing is that yet again we have Obama running 8 years ago, and he was saying that no way, this was a disaster. He was against this sort of thing. No more of these trade agreements that make the economy, the manufacturing economy of the United States, and investment flow outward into other economies in the third world where labor is much less expensive. And yet, what has happened? We have Obama doing the same thing. He's pulling another one
that's
of these
what I
Bill
thought.
Clinton things.
I remember being
But
shocked.
why?
Yeah, that's
I
the
was-
question. Why? It's not in the interest of the United States. It's in the interest of the very powerful investment class in the United States, but
Right.
not in the interest of the American people or in the interest of national
So-
security.
It seems to me like Obama personally, being that he's going on his way out, and he doesn't have to run a popularity contest because he's not going to have any voters voting for him. So it seems to me like there has to be some sort of personal benefit to him to do something like this.
I've heard people suggest that his family is being held hostage. All I know is that when Obama came in, he started hiring straight from Goldman Sachs and Wall Street big shots. Ever since the Clintons, the Democratic Party's been very close to Wall Street, and Wall Street doesn't care about the Republicans as long as they got a good Democrat in there to take care of their interests, apparently. So, but Democrats have to appeal to this progressive base, and so Hillary says now that she's against TPP. Well, she helped negotiate TPP. In her memoir, she boasts that she helped create the TPP, which would isolate China and bring prosperity to the region, of course. She boasted that it was the gold standard of trade agreements. And
It'd be
it
pretty
really does
interesting.
trump any trade agreement you've seen.
It's yet again giving away the interests of the United States to a small class of investing people. Despite everything that's happened, this class has blown up our economy, and then they were reimbursed for their what do they call it? Their moral peril that they.
These are the people who steal pensions.
These
Don't
are the people who lost.
the-
Oh, Martha's still on the line. Hold on. Pardon me, Martha?
Does the Congress have yet to vote on this? Is there any possibility of stopping it?
Yes, indeed. There's this 90-day comment period right now, and from what I'm seeing, even Republican think tanks are very disturbed by what they've seen in the TPP. This is the most egregious assault on the sovereignty of nations that the corporations have made so far.
Well, it's kind of.
Well, this is worse than NAFTA.
It's worse than NAFTA.
It's going to take away workers' rights, and it's going to violate local, state, and federal laws here in the United States. And every country that signs this agreement is going to be affected the same way or worse than the United States.
Yeah.
You have anything else to add, Martha?
No, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm kind of curious to see what Obama's next job is. Being that after NAFTA, Clinton, he started his own foundation, so therefore he had quite a nice paying job. And while his wife was going around talking to other countries, all these countries started, contributing to Clinton Foundation.
Well,
So
if he
I'm kind
does-
of
if
curious to see what Obama comes up with
If
in
he
his
does
next
what Clinton
career.
did, he'll go on a long speaking tour talking about how wonderful globalization is and how we've entered the end state of history.
Well, yeah. Why does Obama support the TPP? I've heard another possibility that he's
Maybe
just
his life
pretending
depends
to
on it.
support the TPP because he knows it's going to fail anyway, but he wants the Republicans to get the blame. Because if you look right pardon me, right now the biggest opponents to the TPP, after people like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, are actual Republicans like Orrin Hatch of Utah, who, from his point of view, there's not enough giveaway to the pharmaceutical companies.
Well, both parties are kind of being torn apart by this. In a sense, you see especially on the Republican side, I think you see a party that's in rebellion against its own establishment and leadership, even more than on the Democratic side. And I think that this continuous favoring of the Wall Street investment class over the actual small to medium business class is what it's about on the Republican side. And I don't know why more Democrats are not outraged by yet another one of these agreements, especially after the blow up of the economy 7 years ago, and everything that's happened to denude the United States of its laboring wage class and the good jobs that used to exist in the United States when it was a more insular economy. This was the envy of the world, and it's stripped of its value at this point, and this is yet another avenue into more of the same.
Well, this agreement, TPP, it signifies workers making less money and working harder.
Yes. Because otherwise, your job disappears faster than it is going to otherwise.
Products may be more expensive.
Yeah.
All these things the people is manufacturing. It's gonna be. I don't understand this agreement because what it's causing is people won't be able to afford all these new products.
Even the Heritage Foundation, one of the most Republican and
Reactionary.
pro-growth, free trade, they say TPP is not a free trade agreement. Even the Heritage Foundation says this is something completely different. We have a caller, her name is Cindy, but let me make this point first, Cindy. Even the Heritage Foundation looks at the TPP and they're appalled. They say there's nothing here for American business. The only people who get anything out of this are pharmaceutical companies, Wall Street, insurance companies, and extraction companies like oil and mining.
And it's happening already in Mexico.
Cindy?
Cindy, let's have your views tonight.
Well, I had a couple of questions. I wanted to know, I haven't heard much about the manufacturing sector.
The manufacturing sector.
I'm just kind of curious how the panel views how this TPP would affect raising the minimum wage or livable wages. It just strikes me as having a lot of concern for American companies to be able to go abroad and not have to follow the same rules that we require of them here.
Well, certainly that's been the tendency of trade agreements like these to begin with, is to depress wages in the countries from which the investment is coming.
Well,
The United States in this case.
yes, but I just also wanted to mention they don't have to follow the same environmental laws that we have in place here, so they're allowed to just go dump toxic crap all over in someone else's backyard.
And obviously the trade agreements are about lowering the standards even here.
Well, this is something that Elizabeth Warren warned about, that the way she reads the agreement, people could say that the United States having high standards environmentally, regulations that prevent all sorts of pollution, bad environmental effects, that there'd be a basis for lawyers from corporations saying, well, that is now illegal because that is in violation of the agreement. And Stephen has looked into this quite closely, more closely than I have, exactly how that works.
And I have looked into that, but also that meme, if you would show it again and show it from the top line, not being cut off the picture at the bottom.
Well, I have this article of the Atlantic,
Sure.
and it talks about this issue. If people get a minimum wage raise from $8 to $16,
Locally, say in Grand Rapids.
in Grand Rapids,
A foreign corporation could sue under the rules of the TPP, be judged not in a court, but in an arbitration commission of lawyers picked by the corporations who had worked for the corporations to make the decision of whether the local law should be struck down as an impediment to the profit of the corporation investing in that place,
And no-
whether
and no-
domestic or foreign.
Only the United States government can decide if the city government can participate on the lawsuit.
Well, essentially, Cindy, what you're saying, of course, what you know is that the investment in, say, Malaysian manufacturing by someone in the United States is made even more profitable by the fact not only that the labor is extremely cheap, but they don't have to watch out for the environment. They can destroy their environment. They can pollute all they want to. And that also adds into the profit, because they're just making the environment pay for the profit of the person investing in the United States, who would rather see people in the United States lose their job so that they can make a lot more money by having the investment capital flow from the United States to Malaysia and do something that was previously done at a higher wage and under higher standards of environmental quality regulations. And that's how it works. And that's
Correct.
why this is such a bad idea, because it just is, as people have often said over and over again, it's a race to the bottom. And this depresses wages in the United States, and it becomes a pressure on the quality of our own environment ultimately as well.
Well, I had one more concern quickly. I noticed the levels of human trafficking coming from Central America and south of our border is extremely at an all-time high. It seems ever since we passed NAFTA and CAFTA, there just seems to be this overabundance of trafficked children, and I'm just wondering how that would affect, the Asian Pacific nations once we pass TPP. I can't imagine that, it just seems very clear that every time there's a higher U.S. presence globally, human trafficking tends to go way up. So I'm
Well,
going to excuse myself and let the panel just go at that.
Well, that's a great insight, Cindy. And
Thank
from
you. Thank
what we know is that human trafficking did indeed go up quite a bit after NAFTA. The Mexican border was a place porous enough for the trafficking of children sex slaves. Many of them were handed off to their buyers at Disney World or Disneyland, because of the crowds, as you know, and they were told to run up to so and say hi, daddy, and go away with him.
And,
These
this is,
let me finish on human trafficking and NAFTA and TPP. Certainly we saw human trafficking go up, but also that was during the collapse of the Soviet Union, and a lot of the human trafficking came from Eastern Europe. A lot of it is, you got your high-end human trafficking, like Trump's latest wife is, in a sense, human trafficking from Eastern Europe at the high level. He said, "Oh, hey, come over here and marry me. I'll make you a citizen." But
and well, I want to mention also that, like, Grand Rapids is there is a lot of human trafficking there.
yeah, there's a lot of human trafficking.
With all their religious aspects. Well, what supposed to be, people's very religious here, but this is a city that has a lot of human trafficking.
There's more slavery in the world now than ever, at least in absolute numbers. But of course, there are a lot more people in the world. I don't know if there's a higher percentage of slaves, but since the beginning of this TV show, we've had a critique of capitalism, and we've always said that there's no fine line between wage slavery and slavery. That was one of the things our founder, your congressman, vote no. What does that mean? Oh, yeah. Certainly everyone should call their congressman and tell them to vote no on TPP.
Human trafficking is the result of local communities falling the hell apart
Yeah,
when
absolutely.
they're manipulated
That's
by
right.
this global investment
Right.
class. That wants
Capitalism
to see-
turns everything to money. First it comes in and breaks everything, breaks up the family, breaks up the village. Now they're going to sell off the teenage girls to rich guys in California.
Well, they themselves don't do that, but it's the
Yeah, they do.
result of what they do. It's the result of destroying the corn economy in Mexico is that the village is destroyed. The fabric of society in rural Mexico was destroyed, and so one of the effects would have been human trafficking and
narco-trafficking too.
flows of labor, people becoming involved in narco-trafficking who would have been completely satisfied to have a life that people had had for growing corn for thousands of years in Mexico, and then suddenly one day it was destroyed by some agreement that was to the advantage of people on Wall Street.
Right, and TPP is NAFTA on steroids. So if you like NAFTA, you're going to love TPP, right? Well, we got to stop TPP. You know, when I started this show, I wanted to talk about it, and I keep starting to, but I can't seem to get you guys to talk about the politics of it.
Okay,
Hillary
well,
Clinton helped design TPP. This is her idea of good policy. She even said so over and over again, and she was proud of this thing, but people seeing this agreement now say, there's no way we want anything like that. So she says, all right, I'm against it. And that made headlines for a couple days about 6 weeks ago. A week later, she's hedging her bets by saying, well, I did help design the TPP, but it somehow got changed along the way. But if it starts looking more like it used to look, then she might have to start taking a look at it again.
I think people.
Those are almost her exact words.
I think
Bernie Sanders opposed TPP.
Of course, that's the point.
well,
The Republicans hardly talk about it because they just agree that they should. But these think tanks on the Republican side are saying the Republicans are wrong. This is not a free trade agreement. They need to look at the small print here.
Hillary was the senator from Wall Street, and Wall Street
That's what she said.
wants that. Wall Street, if you read the Wall Street Journal, for 20 years, the Wall Street Journal hasn't been about where to invest in the United States, really. It's been about investment in the third world, and it's assumed that the United States is not the field of investment. And so Hillary Clinton, senator from Wall Street, and then the negotiator of TPP, is now against TPP in the same way that she and Bill were against NAFTA, meaning it's a falsehood. It's as simple as that.
You do hear a lot of people say it's kind of hard to trust Hillary Clinton. And
Don't do it. Don't trust her. Don't.
I always
She's lied before. She'll do it again.
I never blamed Hillary for Bill. And I was suspicious of Bill the first time I heard him, because the first time I heard him in 1991, he was saying that the American government is a corporation and that taxpayers are the consumers who consume the clients who consume the services of this corporation, and that if he's made CEO of this corporation, he would make that corporation deliver better services cheaper.
To the stockholders.
To the stock, you didn't mention that.
I mean,
But
who
yeah,
are the
that's how it works.
stockholders? The people on Wall Street. I mean, they have more stock than the average citizen who votes. I mean, they're a stakeholder, but they're a small stakeholder. So who do you listen to if you're Bill Clinton or if you're Hillary Clinton? I think it's obvious.
Well, Mitt Romney, it seems to me, was saying that 47% are dependent on government, but the other 50%.
Moochers.
Those, yeah, the 47 are moochers, but he says the 53% are the real job creators, or what? The real yeoman farmers. The real,
But that's, I mean, even from his perspective, that's
tax-paying
an ever-shrinking
citizen.
class.
But if you
as you can see why it would be outraged.
if you really see more try to investigate what this upper class represents, they are the moochers. They are the ones taking tax breaks. They are paid with the work of the workers,
Corporate welfare.
corporate welfare. And so they are the moochers, not the poor woman, single woman with 3 or 4 children who cannot even afford to pay the rent. It's these corporations that they're taking all the money. And
But
For
they
all
have
these
their own
involved.
logic. They epitomize selfishness itself, but they are done in an impersonal way, so that each cog in the corporation makes the corporation go and do these terrible things, but it's just the logic of the corporation, and each member of the corporation is somehow innocent of the actual malignant actions of the corporation, because the corporation is its own entity. That's why this, what's this, Citizens United. Corporations are people too. So they have the free speech rights. But the thing about a corporation is that, for one, it's basically immortal now. There was a time when a corporation's charter could be revoked by a state, but that hasn't happened in so long. I doubt any court would let it stand. But when you think about it, corporations, if they commit crimes, if they're people, why can't they be penalized like people?
Well-
But they're immortal. There's this big problem.
There's,
Well, let
there's
me-
management that can be found culpable, but the investors
Never
are
happened.
just the investors, and they can go through life feeling entirely innocent of what management does with their investment
Remember Kathy
dollars.
Lee Gifford, who, when she found out that her clothes for her clothesline that was being sold at Kmart or one
Yeah,
of those
yeah.
places was all made by
Enslavers.
Maquiladora.
But children,
sweatshop
Yeah,
children.
children.
Yes, this is the logic of capitalism, and we brought this up 20 years ago when we started this show. All these years, that's what this show has been about.
The same for the Winnie the
Capitalism
Pooh
versus
line, by the way,
democratic
yeah.
socialism. The show
Bernie
began.
Sanders.
This show began as the Society for Economic Equality.
let me give
It is
you-
a Society for Economic Equality. We believe in social equality, gender equality, racial equality, religious equality. We believe in one person, one vote. I personally think that 16-year-olds should be able to vote, but those are things we can differ on. Right now, we've got a few things we got to agree on, and one of them is that TPP is the tip of Hillary Clinton's foreign policy iceberg, and we've got to defeat it before the election, and we got to work hard to make sure that Bernie Sanders is the next president of the United States. So we have only a few minutes left. We'll take another call if anybody calls, 459-4881. Otherwise, I'd like my esteemed guest, founding member and executive producer of CTV, original member of Society for Economic Equality, Mark Zapatowski, and Pablo Bello, who is one of our most recent members and the host of
Tiempo Latino.
Latino. Yes.
Latin times. Well, I would like to add something.
Oh, Bernie
Steve.
Sanders is against TPP big time. He was against NAFTA big times too. His critique of these agreements is very much like ours, and it always has been. We've always said, yeah, this is bad. NAFTA, TPP, no good.
Well,
Anyway, sorry.
I would like to add something, Steve. Well, here in town, we have a big corporation that cheats people.
Out of wages.
No, they
The pyramid scheme?
The pyramid
Oh,
scheme.
yeah.
Amway,
I mean, Amway, they tell
which
you,
is headquartered in the Cayman Islands, by the way.
Right.
and it's here in
American Way
Grand Rapids,
Corporation.
and they promise to poor people they're gonna be rich
They sell hope to
if
them.
you
yeah.
if you sell soap, detergent, shampoo, or whatever, you're gonna be rich.
Yeah.
And I seen poor people selling shampoo and detergent on the parking lots, thinking they're gonna sell this to the community,
But
And
it's
sadly,
more expensive.
They say a product is more expensive than a store. Who's gonna buy it? This kind
Well,
of stuff,
as you know, they're selling hope, Pablo.
and this is what I have seen personally. People trying to sell these products to the community, and the community simply says no because this is more expensive than buying soap in a store. So who's gonna buy? Too many.
Well, apparently they were able to get enough suckers to buy the stuff to sell, to try to sell. And there were always a few who did well on it. Usually people like in Christian circles, if they had the right charisma and the right connections, and a lot of...
Because they got people under the pyramid, they put themselves higher in the pyramid by getting more people under
Right.
them at these
They
weird
sold the
parties.
hope.
And
Yeah, they're like,
that's
hey,
the
this is a
selling
good
of hope.
Christian, this is a
That's-
good,
that's
this is a
why-
good Christian corporation.
That's why a
And
pyramid
you'll-
scheme is illegal, technically. and
Well, that's
Amway
why
spent
Jimmy
so much
Carter's
money.
Justice Department
Right.
was investigating Amway when Amway got nervous and donated
They-
a lot of money to Ronald Reagan,
Reagan,
which is
so-
when this whole thing began. If Jimmy Carter
And
had
then
a second turn,
he dropped the federal suit against them.
oh, we've only got 1 minute to go. 20 years
And
ago.
This is disgraceful that what these people is doing to poor people, man. Like, I mean, these poor people buying all these products they can sell, and then
Oh, you're
they're
talking
getting-
Amway
they're
again.
getting-
Well, Amway is a good
know.
model of Wall Street. Wall Street is constantly extracting money from large numbers of people and moving it to small numbers of people.
Well, and Americans are always being propagandized on this American dream thing, but it's becoming BS because of what has actually been happening to the country under all of this globalization of the economy.
Well, you know what the key to all that BS is? Bernie Sanders. We've got 30 seconds left. You've been watching Oh Say Can You See from the Society of Economic Equality.
Which
This
comes
is
to you
November.
the first, the third, and fifth Wednesday of every month live, 8 to 9 p.m. Reruns are Tuesday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Vote for Bernie.
I'd like to say thanks to the camera people here, Mary Lou, Martha, and Cindy.
Mr. Blue, the Bones.
Gracias, gracias.
Mr. Blues, the Bones Man, you made the show. We could have done it without you because that was the exact correct comment to Donald Trump.
Oh, thank you to gracias to Juanito, Frank, Gerard. Thank
All
you.
the people behind the scenes who
Thank
make
you.
CTV possible.
This is a lot of work. People don't know this. They think some people told me this is very easy to do, but
But we think everyone
it takes a lot of work. A lot of time.
I don't know what happened to our theme music tonight. Our music doesn't. What happened to our music? Our theme music doesn't seem to exist. Oh, look, and it's funny. Hey, what?